This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Good morning, Dan and Amy. We'll continue updating the details as we get them with respect to the worst mass shooting in U.S. history in Las Vegas in the early morning hours. More than 50 dead, more than 200 injured, according to Las Vegas police. The shooter who opened fire from the 32nd story of the Mandalay Bay Hotel on a area filled with concert goers to a country music festival was killed at the scene. His roommate,
it's
a person of interest at this point, has been located and taken into custody. And that's about what we know.
And a lot of the police officer who took him down, the SWAT team member, in extreme critical condition this morning. 2 off-duty Las Vegas police officers were killed. A Bakersfield, California police officer who was working security for the concert at the time is in critical condition as well. The images are horrific. You know, people listening to Jason Aldean just trying to enjoy a Sunday night open air concert, and 30,000 people were there, and people were running for their lives.
And unfortunately, we know that this is likely to become a political football, as all these mass shootings invariably do. Won't be right now, although it's sort of already starting.
They'll check his voting record, just like they did with Jared Loughner and everybody else.
And more importantly, try and identify his motive. But what's also become a political football, going back to Katrina, is the federal government response to natural disasters. And so the federal government response and the Trump response, in part through Twitter, but only in part, to the need for relief and aid to Puerto Rico after the devastating impact that Hurricane Maria had on the island, has become a political football. And weighing in over the weekend, and start with the non-politicians.
Okay.
FEMA Administrator Brock Long on the topic of the criticism being directed at the federal government response.
First of all, so we have great communication with Governor Rosselló, and I know that the president has spoken with him today. The vice president was with us as well. Not only Governor Rosselló, but Governor Mapp and the Virgin Islands, they were hit pretty hard as well. Mm-hmm. Bottom line is we have great communication. The governors are part of our unified command effort. The problem that we have with the mayor, unfortunately, is that unity of command is what is needed to be is ultimately what's needed to be successful in this response. The bottom line is we've had a joint field office established for numerous days in San Juan, and what we need is for the good mayor, to make her way to the joint field office and get plugged into what's going on and be successful. So I think that's the bottom line on that tweet.
So the mayor of San Juan, of course, is the woman who's been donning the Luis Gutierrez-provided T-shirts over the weekend, changing her tune on her assessment of the federal government response and Trump's response to the island.
No, she's been living in a shelter herself. And on Saturday, while President Trump was tweeting this, she was out in chest-high water, handing water out to residents to make sure that they're okay. But what President Trump tweeted is, such poor leadership ability by the mayor of San Juan and others in Puerto Rico who are not able to get their workers to help. They want everything to be done for them when it should be a community effort.
Yeah.
To me, he's just flat out calling Puerto Ricans lazy and dependent.
No, actually what he's referring to is Teamsters who won't drive supply trucks.
Because they don't have diesel fuel to fuel the trucks.
That's not the only reason, and there's an interview with a representative of the union talking about union issues. So that's not it. Puerto Rican CEO Jorge Rodriguez, New York Post editorial, he was the head of an international engineering firm in Puerto Rico, talked about sending his 50 engineers to help in the aftermath of Hurricane Maria. He sent them to FEMA because, quote, for the last 30 years, the Puerto Rican government has been completely inept at handling regular societal needs, so you just don't see it functioning in a crisis like this one. Navy Captain Jerry Hendricks, in an interview in Bloomberg, who actually was, for decades, a service officer on the high seas with high-level staff jobs, Chief of Naval Operations Executive Panel, Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Policies irregular warfare quadrennial defense review, and so on and so forth, assessing from a professional perspective, someone who knows about a military and civilian response to natural disasters, the federal government response so far, and was generally positive about it and undermined some of the specious arguments made by political hacks like El Gallito and his minion in San Juan. For more on the politics of Puerto Rican hurricane relief, we're pleased to be joined by our friend Jonah Goldberg, National Review columnist, the author of numerous books, including bestsellers, including Liberal Fascism, The Tyranny of Cliches. Jonah, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, it's great to be here, guys.
So what's your assessment of the assessments of the federal response to Puerto Rico?
I'm a little bit of the Iran-Iraq war state of mind on all of this. I think that it's pretty obvious that that Puerto Rico's local government has problems, that Puerto Rico is in a terrible, terrible situation. And I also think that the mayor sort of decided to make this a partisan thing, which I thought was ill-advised. And I thought that it was ill-advised for Donald Trump to join in that game, and to make this seem like he was putting blame on the Puerto Ricans. And you can defend. The thing is, people who really like Donald Trump can defend Donald Trump on just about anything, but they often lack a certain amount of imagination about how other people are going to perceive what he does. And as a political PR matter, I just thought this was shoving his chips into the pot and walking away from the table. He had gotten shockingly good press from the mainstream media for how Harvey and Irma were handled in both Florida and Texas. You know that if there was anything for the press to beat up on Trump about in terms of the federal response, they would have found it, because that's the story they obviously wanted to run. And yet, both of those things, as bad as those hurricanes were, and as much credit as I think local governments in Texas and Florida deserve, Trump didn't screw it up. Trump, got great press for all that and handled it pretty well, and he just sort of drew back a lot of the political capital he earned from those things by getting in the gutter and having this sort of silly, spat with a clearly partisan mayor of San Juan.
Well, she wasn't slamming President Trump directly, though, when she was asking for help. She was asking for help from anybody, from Cuba, from any other Caribbean islands. Can somebody please just help us? And then he takes that as a personal attack, and then they have this incredible war of words, and I just think he stepped at it, and he's got egg on his face. And
I agree with that. I think there's something to be said for taking the high road. There's something to be said for acting presidential. And I think, look, the mayor of Puerto Rico had to have some political sense of what she was doing when she was sort of essentially slamming the response from the U.S. federal government. She probably didn't count on the fact that Donald Trump would take it personally, but Donald Trump takes almost anything imaginable personally if he can. But, I just think that there's blame to go around on both sides, but I think Donald Trump deserves more because he's the president of the United States. He is supposed to be above, take the high road on a lot of things, and we've now live in a society where a lot of the president's biggest fans celebrate the fact that he takes the low road, and I'm not part of that crowd.
Well, so here's the thing. I mean, a couple of things. One is, I agree that he shouldn't have tweeted. It was unnecessary because the federal government response from the professionals can stand on its own merits and give lie to what the San Juan mayor was saying about the federal response, which was a reversal of what she had been saying just a few days earlier to point up the partisanship. And by the way, she's also being identified as a political hack by, as I mentioned, local business leaders, as well as a former attorney general for Puerto Rico who described her as such, and she's just trying to position herself to run for governor of Puerto Rico. So he could have left the politics with her, and as you said, taken the high road. I agree with that. But in terms of the merits of this, one of the things that, as you said, the media was looking for there, Katrina with Donald Trump, well, they didn't have anybody to cry racism in Houston or Florida, at least nobody that bubbled up to the surface. And she has in Puerto Rico, so now they have their news peg.
Yeah, look, you raise a point that kind of drives me crazy. I'm sort of ideologically homeless or politically homeless these days because when I praise Trump, I get all sorts of grief from the left, and when I criticize Trump, I get all sorts of grief from the right.
I hear you, brother.
One of the things about the sort of mainstream media's desire to go after, the way it goes after Trump. Look, Chuck Todd is a friend of mine. He's a host of Meet the Press. But this weekend on Meet the Press and on some other shows, you saw these people trying to sort of connect the dots to make his spat with the mayor of Puerto Rico about racism and bigotry. And, they connect these dots going back a year to that former Miss America or Miss Venezuela or whatever.
Brought that up again?
Right.
Yeah, and the point is...
It's like a beautiful mind. Yeah.
Donald Trump is a runaway fire hose of invective towards anybody that bothers him. And when a fire hose goes nuts, it's going to spray on a lot of people. And if all you want to do is pick out the black and Latino ones and create a narrative that he's bigoted against blacks and Latinos, it's very easy. But you could also pick out a narrative where he's critical of Jews or of tall people or of left-handed people. I mean, because he's a counterpuncher and he criticizes people whoever goes after him. And what I think is sort of fascinating about the way the media does this is that they don't know how to talk about something being bad unless it's bigoted or racist or sexist. Like, if Donald Trump gets into a spat with Mika Brzezinski, it has to be sexism, right? And I'm not saying he's not necessarily a sexist or anything like that, but if he gets into a spat with me, I don't think it was anti-Semitism, which, we did get into spats. It's just that he grabs the nearest weapon to hand against any critic that comes after him. And I just think it's sort of interesting about the psychological laziness of the mainstream media, that they need it to be about bigotry and racism because they don't know how to talk about things in any other terms.
Which is why then it's so easy to turn around and undermine them. So the black Democrat mayor of Houston wasn't a problem. The response to Houston, which is a third white, a third black, a third Hispanic. The response to Florida, which has a huge Latino population. I mean, those weren't problems. So he wasn't a racist then. And then when Maria hit, he turned into a racist as it pertains to hurricane relief. I mean, it's just laughable on its face. And I think that's what people respond to when they're put into this binary.
Right. But the problem here is that he kept saying to reporters and tweeting, we're doing a good job in Puerto Rico. I know 7 family members who we still can't find. So don't say it's a good job. And don't, like the acting Homeland Secretary Elaine Duke saying there's going to be some good news stories coming out of this. Come on, people haven't even contacted their loved ones yet. I mean, we don't even know where they are. You can't say a good job because we don't, there could be hundreds of people, maybe even thousands of people dead, and we don't even know because we can't get into those villages to find them.
I got no objection to that whatsoever. I think this desire, I think the White House didn't want to deal with another hurricane story.
With hurricane fatigue.
I think they felt like, hey, my gosh, we got 2 hurricanes in a row, and we came out looking pretty good, and then there was this third one, and it hits this island that, I don't think Donald Trump has a huge amount of warm feeling for. I don't think it's necessary because he's bigoted. I just think he just doesn't care. He doesn't think about Puerto Rico. It's not like Texas or Florida, the states that he needs electorally. And
yeah, they don't vote in the general. They vote in primaries.
And I think they just sort of was like, let's get this out of the news cycle as quickly as possible. And the problem is that the facts on the ground don't lend themselves to that. I mean, Puerto Rico was devastated, and it's also got long. I mean, Donald Trump is right when he says Puerto Rico has serious structural fiscal issues that were a huge problem before it was hit with a hurricane. And I think he's just not being very presidential about it, but he's sort of, you could always tell what Donald Trump is thinking because he telegraphs it. He sort of says it out loud or he tweets about it. And he just wants this thing to go away, and he doesn't want it to be his fault, and he doesn't want it to be his problem when they try to figure out how to fix Puerto Rico, once all the debris is cleared, and it's a mess.
I really don't think he should visit Puerto Rico tomorrow. He should cancel that trip. What do you think?
Oh, I think that's probably right, yeah.
I would never go there.
Well, now also because of the Vegas situation, he's going to have to address today. But anyway, Jonah Goldberg, he is a National Review columnist, the author of numerous bestsellers, including Liberal Fascism and The Tyranny of Cliches. Jonah, thanks so much for being with us again. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Listen to podcasts of Dan and Amy from the AM 560 mobile app. Download it today at 560theanswer.com/mobile.
Coming up, your phone calls, 312-642